Good morning, everyone. How are you doing so far? Good? All right, so my name is Toni. I work in My Teresa in Barcelona right now, but I was born and raised here in Alicante. Welcome to this wonderful city. So I'm super excited to be here, to have the conference here this year. And today I'm going to show you how you can create your own formula to prioritize your backlog. Prioritizing is kind of a weird thing, kind of counterintuitive, because we don't have enough time to do everything we need to do, so we spend a lot of time trying to decide what not to do. Who here is running some priority sessions or steering committee sessions to prioritize stuff? Most of you. And who has ever come out of one of those sessions thinking, I think we should deprioritize prioritizing? Because it doesn't bring enough value, right? And time is not just the only thing we waste in those sessions. Not being able to prioritize right brings a lot of different problems with it. Not able to communicate our vision, misalignment, people confused, frustrated, ambiguity. Yes? So it goes beyond the time we spend, but goes more into the vision and also the alignment and the articulating why we're doing something. But why is it so hard to prioritize? Why is it so hard to get a group of people to agree on some priorities? Should be just common sense, should be easy, right? So I invite you, we have the Christmas dinner soon, right? In family, everyone. I invite you to drop this question at the table. Will you rather get €1 million today, right now, or will you wait 10 years for €2 million? Do you think you can? Do you think you will agree on the answer for this? And the reason is because we all have an opinion, and we are all right. There is not a right or wrong answer for this. We are all right in our own context, right? So we all are subjective to our own situation, our knowledge, our expertise, our previous experience. Yes? So we're all right if we're looking at it from our perspective. So subjectivity is an interesting thing here. Subjectivity typically brings you the bigger picture, all of the different cases, all of the details, all of the things you haven't thought of, brings all of this complexity into the conversation. But it kills alignment. It kills the alignment. You can't align when you have so many different subjective opinions. Objectivity, on the other hand, brings alignment, but is missing a bit of the picture, right? Doesn't have everything. So the goal here today is that find a way to use individual subjectivity to create this collective objectivity. Wouldn't it be nice if we just had a formula that we can just apply to the backlog and it's perfectly prioritized and everybody's happy? Would you like that? Actually, there are some formulas out there. If you attended Gabri's presentation right now, he talked about this formula called ICE. This is a formula you can apply, right? We all know this famous axis, value versus effort, right? We have value, we have effort. That's a kind of formula as well that helps us prioritize. Of course, highest value, lower effort goes here. This is the priority, right? And what usually happens is this. Clear priorities, right? So really, this is my subjective opinion here, but I don't like it as a tool for prioritizing. Maybe for descoping, maybe for we're not working on this, but not to prioritize really on a ranking, right? So what we're gonna go do now is to create a formula from scratch. We're gonna create it live here now. That is not only gonna allow you to prioritize your backlog perfectly with everybody happy, but it's also gonna bring a lot of alignment and clarity to your product. Gabri was also mentioning about all of the conversations. The importance is in the conversations, all the questions and knowledge and learnings that we generate while having these conversations. Who came to my talk last year? Oh, we have a few. Okay, it wasn't so bad then. So last year I was talking about we were climbing mountains, right? So this year we're going backpacking. You know, I'm a huge traveler. I love traveling. Just came back from backpacking in Cuba 2 days ago. So I'm still jet lagged a bit. Couldn't sleep last night, so I was working on the slides last minute. But I really, when I was backpacking, I backpack so often, right? Because I take so many trips every chance I can. I love it. And I see the product like the backpack. I need to carefully select which items I take for my trip. I can't take everything I like. I have some restrictions. There are some items that will be very helpful in my trip, others maybe not so much. So let's create a formula to prioritize my backpack. And hopefully you can apply the key concept of this to your own product, obviously, unless you want to go on a trip, which you can use directly. Okay. All right, so this first step, empty backlog. We're not burning the backlog, but we have an empty backlog. We start with something. And we're going to throw some items to this backlog. So in this case, my backpack, right? We have a phone, we have a jacket, and we have a toothbrush. Which is the most important one? Who thinks the smartphone is the most important one? Some people, yeah? The jacket. The toothbrush. So subjective, right? It's like some people, you know, you are evaluating different things, right? So next step, let's find a variable to sort this. Let's just find something, some reason to sort them, maybe the why, maybe the destination. And I'm telling you, I'm going to a very cold place. Now suddenly it's the jacket. So clear, right? And this can happen with a product, right? The product will give you a clear message, this is where we're going, and it helps a big deal prioritizing, right? Hopefully you did some research, you actually checked that it's cold there, you're not just assuming, maybe it's super hot, and then check it. So we define this variable, first variable of the day, cold. If it helps with cold, we give it 1 point. If it doesn't, 0 points. Okay? Very simple formula so far. We're going to be evolving this formula because the whole idea is that we find the right formula for us. And I invite you to do it then next week or whenever with your product. Then we have this formula. We apply it to the product backlog, and this is what we get. Now we have clear priorities. Yeah? Make sense? Okay. All happy. Let's add some more products. And we're going to add motion sickness tablets, you know, for not feeling sick, taking transportation. Let's apply the formula. It got to the bottom. So obviously the guy who presented this feature is very upset because he really thinks we need, right? There's always this guy who really thinks we need something, right? And he really says, I mean, guys, the whole point of this trip is that we go whale watching. When I take this boat, we're going to see whales, and I get super sick in boats. I mean, it's going to ruin my whole experience. So we definitely need this, right? So then there's this conversation, this debate. Okay, is it really the point to see whales or not? Can we maybe not do this? Okay, we all agree. We want to see whales. This is important for us. And this is when now we review and adjust the formula. And there are different ways of adjusting this formula. We can combine variables, define variables. We will see examples of all of this. And there will be a summary at the end as well. So now we're going to add a new variable to accommodate this new reality we all discovered. This is design phase. So this is when we first set up the formula. And we're going to add the motion sickness variable. Now we have another variable. Motion sickness helps with this 1 point. Doesn't help with this 0 points, right? I'm going very step by step. Like this, right? This is our formula now. Cold plus, yes. We apply it to the backlog, and we get now this. 1 point, 0 points, 0 points. Good. Jacket at the top, tablets at the top. All happy, right? But now is when the subjectivity comes. It's always good to have these conversations. And now we're saying, okay, actually, you know what it looks like? It looks like we're prioritizing things that keep you like healthy, or like that you feel well, right? So let's combine those variables. Let's say, okay, this is health, really, what we're talking about. So let's just simplify a little bit the formula. Health. Boom. Okay. Good. Now everything that is healthy, helps our health, goes up. Now we have clear vision, health. Be careful with the vision syndrome, because now people bringing features to these sessions, they started realizing that health takes a lot of attention. This is going to get priority. So I'm going to start thinking a lot of healthy stuff. Let's add a mosquito net there as well. Let's add that sun blocking, maybe some weights to the exercise. That's healthy, right? Then some olive oil, of course, and freaking quinoa. I mean, come on. That's super healthy stuff. Let's just put it all on the backlog, apply the formula, boom. All the health stuff is at the top. All right, but this is not going to help us too much if we have all the things at the same priority, right? So now we review the formula again, and we define some levels. Before in the eyes, we had from 0 to 10, right? So now we can define some levels, and we say, okay, let's see. So if it's going to protect me it's going to protect me from getting sick every day, 3 points. If it's going to contribute daily, if it's going to occasionally save me from some pain, okay, different points. And we can make this up. This is all about experimenting and trying it. Let's just go with this. This is my new formula, health with those values. We applied the formula. Great. That looks much better. Okay, this formula seems to be getting somewhere. Let's add some more item to this. Now we have a photo camera, we have a guidebook, we have a credit card. Let's apply the formula. Okay. But obviously there is this guy who brought the credit card feature. It's like, I mean, guys, come in, the credit card is really important. I mean, come on. There's something wrong with this, right? So he makes his case, we're all discussing, we say, okay, actually, yeah, maybe you're right. Maybe actually, if we go back to our definition here, we tend to group things like in how often we use something, right? In this case, it's for health, but maybe really what we're doing is to redefine this variable and say how much we're going to use something. Maybe not for health, but maybe we're going to use it often, so that's going to be important. So let's just change this variable, call it use, and then define points like this. We're going to use this thing every day. I'm going to use this thing most days. I will never going to use this thing. This is the priority we got. This is now my new formula. Apply it. Boom. Okay. Starts to look very good. Okay. But now the vision syndrome comes again. We need to add useful things we're going to use every day. Come on, coffee machine every morning I want to have coffee. And a bed, come on, for God's sake. I would use a bed every day if I have it. Right, so let's put it in the backlog. And then you have a coffee machine and a bed at the top of your backlog. Who has ever had a coffee machine and a bed on the top of your backlog? Anybody? So we review this and say, come on, there's no way we can fit a bed in my backpack. So far we've been talking about the value dimension of things. It's like how much I'm going to use something, how useful it's going to be, how much value it's going to bring me. But this may be the time to add some restrictions to this, because there's no way I can do this. So we add a new dimension, and a new variable for this dimension is going to be, in this case, size. If it takes 5% of my backpack, then 4 points, or whatever points, 3 points. If it takes 50% of more, I don't want to take it, or the weight. This could be in software, obviously, the effort, the time spent, resources. Yes? Okay, so now we have this formula, the use and the size. This is going to determine my priority. We apply it, and then we get this. Okay? All of the things that I don't use and they don't fit, they're at the bottom. But still they got like 4 points, 3 points. That feels wrong. Some people in the room would say that feels wrong. I mean, if it doesn't fit, it doesn't fit. So priority should be 0. There's no way we're ever going to do this. And this is when you can think about changing the operator. Let's make a multiplication out of this, right? And the multiplication, what it gives you multiplication, first of all, gives you 0 for everything that has one of the zeros, but also does some interesting stuff. Before 4 and 2 were 6, and 3 and 3 were 6. Now multiplying these factors, what we're doing is like we're giving more priority to things that have higher score in more dimensions, right? Which kind of makes sense. Still, we can decide what to do with this. We review this, we like it, okay, let's move on. I'm going to just simplify the slide a little bit, so all the 0 stuff at the bottom. And then there is this guy that has been quiet for 3 months. You all have this guy, and then one day comes to this session and says, what about this? Out of the blue, is like, wait, what? And this guy comes and says, what about the passport? Guys, I mean, seriously, right? I mean, we need the passport. And what's the passport in a product? Any example? It could be it's not like anybody wants to do this, but we have to, right? So okay, let's put the passport in the backlog, right? And the passport, okay, poor passport just comes down there. And the guy who presented the passport obviously saying, come on guys, how is this going to be the last priority? It should be at the top. This is super important stuff. Come on. So we have the discussion. Why is it so important? Now, tell me. I'm just going to use it like once. Why is it so important? Because if I don't bring it, I cannot make the trip. Interesting. So maybe this is a new dimension. We're going to create a new dimension, and we're going to call it forget. What happens if I forget this item? If I forget this item, my trip will be ruined. I'm going to give 5 points to this. Or maybe it's hard to replace, or can't be replaced. If I forget this item, I cannot get a new one in my destination. Or maybe I can. Maybe it's easy to just get a new one when I get there. So let's just modify our formula. We have use, we have size, we have forget. This is going to determine my priority. We apply. Boom. Wow, okay. Now most people are happy. Few people are complaining about this. We can still always make adjustments. It's like, okay, fine, we have 30, 27, 18. Maybe we can do something to represent, how important the passport really is. So we can always redefine the levels. Now I'm going to just change the score. I'm going to get 10 points just to make clear that this is more important than every other variable that we have. We can play with this, change the formula, apply it again. Now like clearly stands out, right? Are we all happy with this? Yeah, sure, makes sense. But now there's another guy who says, but hang on, the jacket is really down there when I can just wear it on my own. I don't need to even put it in my backpack. So why are we even considering this, right? This could be in a product like I can outsource it, for example, right? It's not in my backpack, somebody else is doing it. So okay, let's contribute to this. Let's say, okay, it makes 5% or can be carried on my own. Or maybe we can give it 4 points to this case. Whatever. We can just do this. Let's go along with this. Okay, now the jacket is a little bit higher up. The guy who really presented the jacket is happy about it. Everybody else is happy about this stuff. Okay, the phone guy is also kind of happy. He's been quiet so far, but is there. He tried to put it into the health, When we're so focused on health, he said, but really, you need to look at pharmacy. You can go on your phone and find a pharmacy. And you get sidetracked when people are so focused on trying to fit a feature because, the priority goes somewhere. Did you have some of those phones sold because they're good for health? Sometimes, yeah? That happens. And now we start throwing all crazy shit to this. All of the different features we can imagine. But there's an interesting thing here. So now in these sessions, you probably have some sessions where new features are like proposed or presented. It's common practice, something like this, no? Somebody will propose stuff at some point. And because you have this formula now in place, it's inevitable that you will be thinking, okay, when I propose this item now, okay, what's the use of this item? What's the size? What's the forget factor? So it's going to force me to even think about those before I present it. And it's going to force me to kind of upfront select one of those levels and even a priority number already. So it's going to save a lot of time. The guy's going to be much better prepared just because we know how the formula works. And when we present it, yes, we may argue about, is it this level? Is it 4 points? Is it 5 points? Fine. Whatever. That's just minor stuff. But the huge back and forth discussion is already, we saved a lot of time there. Now, this is just interesting. I like to encode this variable. Encode just means, okay, let's just simplify. Use 4, I'm going to call it 4. I'm going to call it 3, I'm going to call it 2. Size, I'm going to use this t-shirt sizing. And for forget, I'm going to use A, B, C, D. And this is just because it's just easier to distinguish dimensions and it's easier to read. So we end up with this. Use, size, forget. USF. That sounds horrible. Ice sounds good. So really, let's market the formula a little bit because it seems silly, but this goes a long way. So let's just call it fuss. So what's the fuss about, right? So you have this. It seems stupid, but it's just easier to remember, to communicate. It just sticks. And then we have this formula, the fuss, right? We have the F with those values, U with those values. And we ended up with this formula, but you could have ended up with a different one. You could have thought of different dimensions and variables, like how much preparation do I need for my passport? Do I need to apply for a visa that is going to take 1 month? That could be the development cost, or it could be we could have added that dimension in certain way. So we can accommodate anything we need. Once we have the formula like this, then we can nicely, after using it several times, people are just get used to this, and it's much cleaner. Makes sense. We know what this is, and it looks cleaner. Right. Okay, so far? Makes sense? So this conference is about keeping it real, so I want to share some real examples, that formulas that we've produced with this system, so we can get some ideas like, okay, we're not talking about backpacks, but maybe about a real product. But you can use it for your backpack too. So we have the I's that Gabriel was talking about. Impact, confidence, ease, or effort, you'll find it different ways. You'll find different operators here as well. Sometimes you see they do the average, sometimes they do the multiplication. I think he told me that they use it this way with some division somewhere. And the different values from 1 to 10, right? That's a formula that exists. I didn't create this one, that was already out there somewhere. But I participated in the creation of the rock. That's a strong formula, right? The rock. And this one was all different stuff. ROI, opportunity, cost. They encoded it differently, right? It's just so many ways you can do this. Sky's the limit. The this. I worked intensively on this one. So I'm going to show you a little bit more detail about this one. This took us a little bit to make it stable. So before I told you, start throwing all sorts of crazy items to the backlog. Usually after 15 items, 20 items, the formula stabilizes, and maybe minor changes in the levels, but it's just not changing much more unless the circumstances changes, right? Unless I tell you, now I'm going into a hot place, or now I'm canceling my trip. Obviously, that will change the formula, maybe, potentially. But let's look at this example, the this. In this case, what we had, they had the value, and they used some sort of Fibonacci, and the value for them is which value is bringing to our product. And they define for each value guidelines. So guidelines to say, okay, when is this 100? When is this 40? When is this 21? So okay, let's make it 100 when really this feature is going to differentiate our product, or it's going to make it highly competitive, or it's going to enable X functionality, or it's going to do this or that. Then a 40 is this, a 21 is this, a 13 is this, right? This will generate lots of conversation and will contribute a lot to what I was saying at the beginning. The vision of the product, why we're doing this, what is our product all about, why are we prioritizing this way. We'll have a much better alignment and understanding when we do it this way and have these discussions defining all of this. That will save us also a lot of time when proposing and prioritizing new items, but also this will cascade down to the development teams. They reduce the ambiguity, confusion, frustration for the teams because they will have much clearer path. And they also had, this was a nice thing as well, they added some reference items. So it's like, okay, examples of things that were 100 in the past. Oh, okay. So it's good to kind of see it in advance. So when we introduced this, then this proposal of new features were much faster. People came prepared already. They knew more or less where this would fit. And it's just all about arguing about the details. But it's a much more focused conversation. Then they had impact. They call it the impact of not doing something. I guess it's just because they could call it this. But it could be the negative value, right? The consequences of not doing something. And they had, okay, no significant damage. We give it number 1. Damage to the process, so these kind of examples, we're going to give it 2. And damage to the business is going to be a significant loss of money or something, then we give it level 3, okay? And this was working for them. They had some examples. And then finally the size, they were just old school ballpark estimation, number of hours. This is the number of size, sorry. And they ended up with this formula like this, which worked for them pretty nicely. And the last example I have is the very nice one, because the last one is called RAM. How cool is to prioritize with RAM, right? I mean, everything flows, everybody agrees, yeah? So here they have some revenue, user, and markets, whatever. I think this market was, if it's a unique feature, if competition already have it and it's obsolete or something. It was something like that. So you can be very creative with these things. Right. So let's summarize. How are you gonna create the next your new formula next week? Because this is all about keeping it real, right? You wanna have your own formula for real. Let's go back to this a bit. So we need to think about this. Subjectivity is important. Every major revolution in history, every major breakthrough came from minority, from some crazy guy who was shouting something nobody was listening to, right? Think about every breakthrough in the history. Like, there was just a minority, right? So we need to listen to those crazy guys now and then. Yeah? Because they see a bigger picture that we may not see. Subjectivity brings the bigger picture. But it kills the alignment. It kills the alignment because it's so much subjectivity you can't align. You need some objectivity to bring you back to alignment. All right? So, the recipe for you to create your own formula next week goes like this. First, you need to some sort of kickoff, few initial sessions where you're going to take these steps. You start with an empty backlog or backpack. Start adding a few items, just a few. Find some reason, find some variable to sort them. Could be the goal, destination, targets. Find some reason. Define those variables, apply them blindly to the backlog. This is important, just apply them blindly. Don't anticipate the results, apply them. And then once you've done this, you can review. Okay, let's see the results. Does it make sense? Does it not make sense? Does the formula needs review? And this will trigger conversations. Why aren't we happy with the results that the formula is providing? And then there will be lots of interesting points there. Usually I put the 15 here because usually after 15 items, the formula doesn't need much adjustment anymore. 15, 20, 10 sometimes, but it could be just detail. So after you get to this point, you can just relax a little bit and use it for new items, right? Then the branding bit that we talked about is somehow important. Just encode the variables, market it, call it a nice way. Sounds good to the ear, so people will accept it more friendly. Yeah. And then once you have this, you have your formula, right? Now you have your formula defined. And then from then on, I suggest you do a couple of sessions, regular sessions, or however you want to do it. You have a feature introduction sort of session where people propose new functionality or items. Run those sessions, and in those sessions are only to introduce new items to the backlog. People will present items. They usually, inevitably, will refer to the variables of the formula to present it, to demonstrate why I think this should be there, because it's very useful, because it's small, because this. Obviously, some other more meaningful stuff for your product. So usually they come much more prepared, and the priority of this item is much faster. Apply the formula blindly, maybe add a few more items, and just leave. Don't try to review the formula at this point. This session is only to introduce new items. And then on a separate time, do the review session, because really the formula review session, we call it formula review, but really we're discussing about our product, about our strategy, about our vision, what we want to achieve, all of these kind of things. So this is where you just go to the backlog, see the priority you got, and then start asking questions. Why is this so high? Why is this so low? Oh, this is so high because if we don't do it, it's going to be so bad. Okay, makes sense. Oh, why is this so low? Oh, because, maybe we didn't consider this. And then we need to readjust the formula a little bit. Yeah? So some general guidelines. 3 dimensions is usually a good number, but you don't need to stop there. Could be 2, could be 4. Usually 3 are fine, because usually you touch on those 3 dimensions. Value, how much value is bringing. Then some sorts of restrictions, constraints, could be time, budget, size, whatever. And then some sort of negative value, consequences. What happens if I don't do this? Opportunity cost, cost of delay. You can imagine what I mean by this. Adjust the numeric values. So when we have the levels, don't stop in 1, 2, 3, 4. Sometimes we want to make one of the variables more meaningful. We want something to stand out because we consider it more important. So you can scale this however you like, to the thousands, to the hundreds, whatever you want. So think about that too. And use multiply is general good operator, because of what I said at the beginning. If we have some zeros, those go. And also, it will prioritize higher things that are high on every variable. So something that is 2, 2, 2, 2, maybe is higher than something that is 4, and then 1, 1, 1, 1. Which it makes sense usually, may not be for your case, but just keep it in mind. So just to finalize, remember, consider subjectivity, use the individual subjectivity to create collective objectivity.